Traveling the Vortex.
We've joined the Doctor as he travels the Vortex and arrive at episode 540. We've come to get our ball back. I'm Keith.
I'm Sean.
I'm Glenn.
How are you guys doing?
Pretty good.
Doing good.
Did you guys do anything fun this week? Everybody's caught up on Mandalorian, right?
Except for what aired today.
Not today's.
But we can talk about episode 1.
Yes, episode 1.
It's so good.
Spoiler work? No, it's not. It was terrible. No, it is. It does nothing but set up plots for the rest of the season. That's all it does.
That's what the first episode of a show is supposed to do at the beginning of the season.
Not the way this one does. This one heavy-handedly does it. There's absolutely nothing. First of all, it opens and treats us like half of us didn't watch Book of Boba Fett or Mandalorian season 2.5.
Half of us didn't.
Because it goes through that whole exhibition of going, and he's got to go take a bath in order to get back in the cult. And so we go through that, which is just a repeat of what we already know he's got to do. And then we get introduced to these pirates and that's the other thing is he comes to the planet first. The big action piece of it is him flying in and saving the group of Mandos that he, is trying to get back into, and by shooting that beast. And that's a great scene. The setup scene's awesome. I loved it. I thought the visuals were really good and the action was fun. But then nothing happens for a while. He ends up going to meet, what's his name? Apollo Creed. And and the frustrating thing about that is he's trying so hard to get back into this cult that he absolutely shouldn't, because we all know that it's not good for him, because he's got, Grogu, and he could be a father, raise this kid. He already is.
He's already learned that other Mandalorians take their heads and helmets off of them.
Right, exactly. And he's made this choice. And so, but he's still gung-ho to get back into this group. And so, but he goes to visit what's-his-name and spins his wheels there, because all that happens is him offering him a marshalship and a plot of land, which he should take anyway. And really, I mean, the show would be over if he did that. It wouldn't be exciting. There wouldn't be more adventures. I understand that. I'm not saying
Book of Boba Fett 2.0.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying that it would make for a good show, but when you do that and you realize the stupidity of turning something like that down, then that makes me mad. That frustrates me. I wish they hadn't done that. Maybe do that later, offer that to him, give it back. And then we set up some sort of little pirate plot. I like the fact that the whatever the place is that Apollo lives is, they're cleaning it up and it's changed. And we've got these pirates that show up to this school that used to be a pub, and they're throwing their weight around, and, they give them a lesson. But there's nothing to that. Other than being an exciting little scene, it doesn't do anything except for set up the little chase scene. When they're going away and trying to go to find, were they on their way to Bo-Katan? I don't remember where they were headed. Anyway,
yeah, they're headed to Bo-Katan.
They're on their way, and then the pirates show up, and you think, oh, it's retribution for what happened on the planet. And no, it's a way to set up this other guy who's going to end up being an adversary in one of the plot lines of a story later on. And then that's it. There's nothing else. It ends. And it's like, what's the point of doing this 20 minutes? I mean, what it is a 20-minute setup that could have been done probably in 5 minutes, is a little short, and then got into the meat of it. Because I'm going to tip my hand just a little bit. The second episode's really good. And so I got really frustrated after I saw how good the second one was, because I thought, well, if I'm let down by the second one, then it's just the writing of the season. But the first episode's nothing happens. It's a bunch of exposition. It's a guy that's going to take a bath. He's telling us he's got to take a bath in order to get back in the cult. They decide, oh, what was really cool? An asteroid field battle and chase in Empire Strikes Back. Let's do that again. And it feels like
people love asteroids.
It feels like a rehash and a catch-up of everything that's gone before, and they don't need to do that in this show. So anyway, that's my opinion. What'd you like about it?
Keith, you want to field that one? Or?
Go for it, Sean.
Now they don't know. Glenn's got a point. It wasn't very good.
I think to your points is the fact of that's why they should not have stepped away from the Book of Boba Fett the way they did.
Stepped away from it or stepped away to it?
In Book of Boba Fett, they shouldn't have stepped away to Mandalorian. They should have come up with another resolution for Boba Fett and given us that be the first episode.
I think they could have had Mando show up at the end and have a cameo, but yeah, they didn't need all that Mandalorian stuff.
They didn't need a whole episode of the Mandalorian in the Book of Boba Fett. That episode should have been episode 1 of the new season.
Yeah, agreed.
And then getting back Grogu and then going to get his redemption, quote unquote.
Yeah, because if you,
I see your points. It's a valid argument.
If you didn't watch Book of Boba Fett, and they're assuming that you didn't because they're trying to catch people up. If you didn't watch Book of Boba Fett, though, you didn't know how he got back together with Grogu. You don't know how he got why he's wearing the chainmail armor that you can see underneath his little tunic. You don't get any of that yet. So I don't know. Bad decision. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I've already had my say.
Okay, I will freely admit that maybe just the fact that, hey, Mando's back is what's got me excited about it.
No, and I can see that. I mean, it is. I was excited. I jumped up and watched it first thing in the morning, but
it is a little heavy-handed. But I think it's a different type of storytelling. I think Mandalorian has kind of, from the beginning, been, the space western and other I think partially, and I still haven't watched Andor yet, but I think partially Andor, from what I understand, is it's on a different plane show than what Mando is. Mando's kind of, I hate to say this, but aiming for the cheap seats. It's flashy and entertaining, and that's about it. Whereas Andor, from what I've heard, this is what Star Wars could be, and so on that base level of here's something fun with a character that everybody seems to like and his cute kid doing, lone wolf and cub. I'm right there with you. I'm fine with what you presented me because we got a little adventure. We got a little setup. The pirate bad guy is obviously going to be the villain for this part of the season. He's rocking a very Pizza the Hut vibe. I was okay with that. I thought that was cool. I liked. Are we going with Mando Dial or Crocalorian for the the cocaine bear with teeth? What are we going with that thing?
Yeah,
that I kept waiting when they did the tethers. I kept waiting for the Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars electrocution thing, and instead it just rolled over and took them all with it. I'm like, that was not a good plan. What are you guys thinking? I'm going to chain myself to the beast. This is going to end poorly for you.
Oh, you know what? The other thing that I'm going to interrupt because I'll forget this again. That's why he went back and saw Apollo, because he wanted to go. I'm going to use these names because I can't remember anybody's names at anything.
I don't fully understand why he needs the droid.
That's just it. He goes there to get the dang droid. They do their own little shot job to get him to reawaken, and of course he's reverted back to original programming and tries to kill him. And then they take him to these little, which are adorable. The scene's great. I love the little guys that are working on him. But they need this part, and so he has to go get this part. And that was just another thing that, okay, we're setting up another plot line for this. I agree with you, Sean, that this show is and should continue to be that fun and flashy Western story. But this first episode doesn't even feel like any other episode of Mandalorian. It feels like the first episode of Book of Boba Fett, where a lot of nothing happened.
Well, they're definitely setting, when he says, what if I go get the part for you?
Yeah, but you shouldn't have to do that because none of Mandalorian did that in the past. Every story led to another story, and it built upon itself, and it didn't need to set up the entire season. And for some reason, Favreau felt like he needed to set up all the plot lines for the rest of the season, and I don't know why he felt he needed to do that.
The rest of the season, the missions of the rest of the season must not be in chronological order. So he must have felt like he needed to, oh, he needs to go get this part. Well, okay, why do we need to go get this part? Well, it feels like he kind of worked backwards from what he did, where he couldn't make them seamlessly go into each other like previously.
Yeah,
that's possible. I agree. The fetch quest is I'm not real excited about, because I feel like we've been there, done that, and okay, I'm gonna go get this bounty. Oh, I lost my ship. Okay, I got to go get the Jawas that did it. I got to do this first. Oh, I got to go over here. That's kind of been the MO of the show. I disagree with you there, because that's very much what they've done. Is this is the path, this is the way, but we're going to go over here, and
they take the long way around.
Yeah, we're very much going to take a lot of detours to get there. And I agree with you that, yes, take the plot of land, settle down, become a marshal. That's totally what you should do.
And there's still plenty of adventures to be had.
There's a school for Grogu. You're all set. But as you pointed out, the show's over at that point.
Yeah, but it shows how stupid Mando's being. Because he's shown a lot of growth in 2.5 seasons. He's shown a lot of growth, and he has become educated by life adventures, things that's happened to him, and he's grown as a character. But when you present that to him and he immediately turns it down because he's going back to his old ways, it's that presenting that at this point was, to me, futile, and made me mad.
I think it
made me mad because I thought I was giving him more credit.
Yeah,
than he now
I think
deserves.
It shows more just how indoctrinated he is. I mean, this is all he's known, because he was brought into this. You have to remember, he's not. He was also, a foundling, and the cult brought him in and brought him up. So he's been brainwashed by these people from day one. And as Bo-Katan pointed out at the end of the episode, it was your cult that fought with that cult that caused this cult that fractured Mandalore to begin with. Yeah. That Mandalore is not a power anymore. If you guys had all stuck together, you would have kicked everybody's butt. Because that's how great a warrior clan there is. But the individual clan politics completely shattered it. But that's all he knows is that. And he stepped out of his comfort zone in the first 2 seasons, dealing with Grogu and getting attached, and this is the extent to which he will go to protect the little guy. And now that he's got him back, he's kind of retreating back to what's familiar and comfortable, because it's still scary for him as a new dad. He doesn't know what to do at this point. So he's going to fall back on what he knows, which is, I'm going to teach him the way that I was taught. But I can't do that because I've been dishonored and I have to go fix that first. Is it the right decision? Probably not.
No,
but I can understand why he's making that decision.
Yeah, no, I can see that too. Yeah, that's a good point.
And I suppose, while he hasn't said it, there's probably something in the back of his head where, yes, he's a foundling. He's not a lineage Mandalorian, where he probably doesn't feel like he has the privilege where he could take off his helmet the way Bo-Katan can, because she is lineage Mandalore.
Well, but
bloodlines.
He's
he's
an
adoptee.
But even in that episode where he first met Bo-Katan, he got pretty much a history lesson in all of the different factions of men, and they're the only ones that don't take their helmet off. So it's not like it's just this one faction that Bo-Katan's part of, or this lineage that she's part of. He understands that there are other factions, that it's not a Mandalorian thing. It just happens to be this group. So I don't know. We'll see. The second episode, and again, I'm tipping my hand, it gave me a lot of hope for the rest of the season, because I really, really enjoyed it. But of course, we'll talk about it next episode. And you guys will be behind one more.
No, hopefully by then I will have watched. Depending on when we record, it will at least be.
I will be behind every week.
All right, yeah.
Because we watch on Tuesday and the new episode drops Wednesday. So then I have to wait a week for it before we can watch it on Tuesday.
Well, and there's no way I'd have been ahead of you guys if we'd have managed to be able to record on Monday, but we had to push till the day, so I got another one in.
What else have you done?
Oh, I was on the Five-ish Fangirls podcast the other day. We were, in fact, I think that released. I think that's out now, and we talked about Ant-Man: Quantumania, and we talked a little bit about it and what we thought of it, and then we kind of expanded and talked about consequences and speculation and looks down the road at the MCU as a whole. So it was a lot of fun. I was glad to be on there, and you can check that out by going to the Five-ish Fangirls website and download that episode. Be sure to check them out. We don't plug them as much as we probably should, but it's a cute little show, sort of birthed out of ours. These were gals that were listeners of our show, and we got to be really good friends with them, and then they got encouraged to go off and create their own show, and it's more about general fandom and niche fandom in general, but it's really good.
That's okay. Is it a spoiler filled discussion about
Quantumania? It is spoiler filled. So if you haven't seen Quantumania, don't listen to it yet.
I take it, Sean, you have not gone to see it yet.
I still haven't been out to see it.
I finished my quest through the Miss Peregrine. I mentioned last week I finished all the novels. Well, I tracked down the movie from the library and watched it.
Isn't it good?
No.
Oh, really? Is that because you read the books?
It's because I read the books. I don't know how much of it I would have liked otherwise, anyways. But the first half of the movie, so I wound up watching it in 2 sittings. And the first half I walked away from going, wow, they did a really good job adapting that so far. There's a couple tweaks that are not quite right. Characterizations that are, they switch some powers and ages around for some of the peculiars. Then I came back to part 2, and it just took a dive off a cliff.
I heard it goes off the rails. I heard it went off the rails at the end. I didn't realize it was that early in the movie.
It starts going off pretty quickly after that. It just change after change after change, and things that don't, like, there is maybe 2 things that happen through the latter part of the movie that happened in the book. The rest is completely off the deep end in a different direction. My of the book is strongly outweighing what they did in the movie.
So now I want to read the book.
Yeah, I highly recommend it, and it's a quick and easy read. I mean, it's a young adult book, so it's pretty easy. And I did appreciate the fact that they used at least one of the original book photos, and at least reposed all the actors in the photos that he pulled for the book. So they just reshot all the photos with the actors in it, so the faces matched. That was a nice touch. So there were some nice aspects of it that they got right. It's just, it took a 3rd act blockbuster twist that didn't need it.
Well, we know there was something else that you did too, Keith. You got a chance to play the new Lost in Time mobile app. And
yeah,
that's also your something new 2-minute review.
Yes, it is. So this new mobile app just came out today. It's called Doctor Who Lost in Time. It's a nice little... So far, I'm only a little bit into it. It's a nice little game where it's a farming type game. And I'm not normally a farming game fan, but you're the Doctor who's trapped with Yaz. So it's the 12th Doctor, or 13th Doctor, and the TARDIS isn't working. So you have to collect Vortex energy in order to try to get the TARDIS to work again. And then you wind up interacting with prior versions of yourselves. K9 shows up and helps you out. You wind up, so you initially show up in unit base. And so the first quote unquote farm you set up is in the unit base. And you eventually unlock characters that can help add multipliers to the farms to make it easier to collect your Vortex energy. And then there are other things that you can unlock in order to, or that you can purchase or earn in order to unlock future things and, move forward. My biggest complaint with it is there are episodes, quote unquote, to them. And every time you start a new episode, you have to restart your farms. So that is my biggest complaint with it. Otherwise, it's really fun. The art is nice. It's got a nice feature where K9 can go and collect the vortex energy for you, so when you're away, it will automatically harvest it for you so you don't lose anything. It's got some nice pairings that you don't really expect. Tin and Sarah Jane are there, and Scaro. There's a lot of really cool stuff to it, so I'd recommend downloading it. The dialogue is pretty spot on, the characterization too.
Oh, is it?
It's pretty good. Yeah.
Well,
There's music, but my phone's always on silent, so I don't know.
I just downloaded it, so I'm gonna start playing tonight.
Did you hear the uptick in his voice? Did you hear it? And we do the thing, and you got to do this, and Canine shows up.
Yeah.
I got excited.
He did
What
get
can you
excited.
say?
Well, very good. Sounds like fun, and I'm gonna check it out.
Hello, fellow time travelers, and welcome to the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast, the only podcast to discuss, in story order, all the Doctor Who novelizations. My name is Tony Whitt, and every 2 weeks or so, I'm joined by a 2 to 3 person discussion panel, including our so-called expert who's been a Who fan since 1979. That would be me. We also get the views of intermediate, casual, and novice fans who either have never seen the show or who have never read these books until these podcasts, including
Dalton Hughes
and
Alison Fitz-Seyfried.
You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you find good podcasts, or even ones like ours. You're listening to Traveling the Vortex, a Direction Point podcast.
Do you collect Doctor Who? Do you have Doctor Who items and you don't know you collect Doctor Who? For all things in the Doctor Who collecting world, tune in to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast, a Direction Point Network podcast. I am Larry Van Rosbergen, your host, and I have been collecting Doctor Who for 40 years. With popular features like collection protection and the most outrageous offer, we have a lot of fun. Available anywhere you get your podcasts. You're listening to Traveling the Vortex, a Direction Point Network podcast.
All right. Well, and of course, this week we're doing Doctor Who, The Abominable Snowman. The animated version came out in North America just at the end of last year, and so we've all finally gotten a copy of it and managed to get it on the schedule, so that's going to be what we're reviewing.
There is great danger.
The Yeti! The abominable snowmen!
Where are they, these mountains?
Don't you know where the Himalayas are? They're in India.
No, not India. This is Tibet. That's where we are, Tibet. Now, there's no time to be lost. I think I'll go and have a scout around. There's something happening on this mountain. I can feel it.
We are besieged. The Yeti have turned upon us. At least that is what we thought until
I turned up.
they're here, somewhere on these mountains.
I discovered the Yeti. The honor's mine, but you want to take it from me.
Fear makes us imagine all sorts of things, including creatures that don't seem to be flesh and blood.
Evil. The feeling of evil. Like a shadow on my mind.
This thing that's here, this evil, it will spread. It has to be stopped, and I think I can do it. Now stop playing games and open these doors, or are you afraid to meet me face to face?
We must make certain that Doctor learns nothing of what is happening. He is a man of great knowledge and intelligence, but he may not show sympathy for the powers that guide us. He may even seek to hinder the great plan. Nothing must interfere.
Mysterious forces are at work in 1930s Tibet. Savage Yeti are besieging a Buddhist monastery. The second Doctor, Jamie and Victoria, arrive expecting a friendly welcome from the abbot, but soon become ensnared in the plans of the extra-dimensional being known as the Great Intelligence.
Animation-wise, I would give it high marks.
The animation is phenomenal.
I think that this is, and this is the difficult thing about this, is we've already reviewed the story for this years ago when, I believe it was when the Snowman was debuting. We did Great Intelligence. We got all this artificial intelligence stuff going on now. The Great Intelligence, we did an Adversary Archive. So we reviewed this, and of course we did Web of Fear because it had just been recently, the episodes had been recently found. Lost episodes have been recently found. So we actually reviewed this and went over the story. So I think probably what we're going to do is we'll focus more on the animation, but I think you can't talk about some of the way this is animated without rehashing some of the stories. So I think that's okay too, to discuss that a little bit.
And if I remember correctly, Sean didn't get the recons watched back then. Not to throw you under the bus.
I wasn't going to call him out, but
I am. I want, because I want to hear his input. So
that's true. This would be Sean's first experience with the story too.
It's funny you say that, because as I watched this, I knew that we had reviewed it, and I remembered nothing. And I could not for the life of me figure out. I was actually going to ask, did we review this? Did I miss it? Because I don't remember this. So yes, it was all new to me. And I'm totally gonna tip my hand here, and Andy will have to forgive me. Even having watched this now, I still feel like I'm fuzzy on the whole. What is the timeline of the Great Intelligence here? Because we're dropped into the middle in a way. This is the middle segment of this intelligence story of technically 4. This is the third one, because
it'd be 2.
Well, if you, here's how this works.
Oh, okay.
Because the Doctor shows up and he's been to the monastery before, but it was an adventure that we didn't get to see.
And he
was given the bell.
And it had nothing to do with the Great Intelligence.
Yeah, no Great Intelligence.
Now, was that episode actually filmed?
No.
It was just a trip to the.
Yeah, it was just a callback. This was
okay.
He had helped them before. They gave him the bell to keep safekeeping. I mean, we get all this from the
you get
story,
all of that in the exposition.
He was given the bell for safekeeping. He's had it all this time. Had forgotten he had it. They show up and he realizes, oh, I could give this bell back. And that's all there is to that. I think
but
the bell's
the way that's set up, it feels like.
But the bell's necessary.
There was a whole other adventure we just missed out on.
No, it's not. Well, it's kind of an off-camera adventure, but it had nothing to do with the Great Intelligence. It just happened to do with this Tibetan monastery, and Padmas Samsava was, the abbot or the whatever his title is, at that time too. I think that's just the bell is a way for us to recognize that something's afoot here, because Padme is going to have is going to he shouldn't be around still, and so I think that's just it's a mechanism to set that up.
Well, and that's the other part of it for me, is that Panda has been astral projecting and
I like that one.
Been taken over by the Great Intelligence in a previously unseen adventure that we are not privy to.
Right.
He's already controlled by so it feels like these two things go together, but they don't.
It did happen between. Yeah.
So that to me was, I spent a lot of wheel turning trying to figure out and literally trying to convince myself that this was the second Great Intelligence story and that Web of Fear comes first, and it doesn't. I really had to, because Travers is the wrong age, and there was a lot of pieces of this story.
I mean, technically, it is the second Great Intelligence story, because now the Snowman comes first.
So now the Snowman comes first.
In the Intelligence's timeline, Snowman is first, then Abominable Snowman, and then Web of Fear. In the Doctor's timeline, it's the way we've had it. So
right, and again, technically, there's a fourth adventure that's missing. That's actually episode 2. because the snowmen would come first from the Great Intelligence story arc. Then he would take over Panda. Then he comes to the monastery in Tibet.
No, I mean,
so
I don't think we
Yeah.
need an adventure where he takes over Panda. I think that's the idea, is that, I mean, we show up in episodes where things have happened that have set up events that we have to fix. So I don't think there's an in-between story here. I think that's the wrong way to say it. We just know that from the evidence in this story, we just know that Panda's been taken over by the Great Intelligence and has been manipulating the events here in order to take over the world.
Right. And it just... Maybe
there's actually a fourth story. It's called Downtime, and there's actually a fifth story. It's called. I mean, there's a whole bunch of
intelligence.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch
yeah,
more in the Lethbridge Stewart books. But
I think that's my downfall. Seriously,
You're coming at it from the wrong perspective. Really,
I've done it backwards because I've come to it knowing all of the previous stories, and so I've just kind of mentally slotted the information I needed here. And then I got to here and found out, oh, we didn't give you all that in this one either. So it's just like, what happened to this story? But that, I get it. I don't need to be handheld most of the time. But this was an instance of, because of all of the lore that has been built up out of this, I still feel like I'm a little lost at times watching this, going, okay, so when did he get zapped, and why is he here, and what's with the bell? Did I miss something with that? And I mean, there was just a lot of, I was very confused for most of it. Okay. So then once I realized that, no, I did miss it and didn't get to the recons, and this is my legit first viewing of this story, which I'm once again extremely grateful for animation. I love this animation style with these types of stories, because it's just, I hesitate to say the perfect accompaniment, but it is the perfect accompaniment. There's something very familiar and warm about it, that they're taking this old school storytelling and pairing it with a very simplistic but good looking piece of animation. And it just reminded me all over again of why I didn't like Reign of Terror, because it's like, it just doesn't look right when you do it that way. And this one, it fits. I was very impressed with the fact that there are a lot of characters, not just Yeti, but the monks. There were many crowd scenes where they had stuff going on in an action set piece, and that they animated it. They nailed all of it. Now, maybe that's allowed because so much of the first 3 to 4 episodes, there's not a lot happening. This is a very dry story. You really could take all 6 parts of this and condense this down to a 3-parter and not miss a beat.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they should have. Maybe they should have given us the other 3 parts to explain the bell. There was so much so much exposition of, oh, that happened earlier. Meanwhile, let's lock you up in the room again. Okay. I mean, and not even capture and escape kind of stuff. Just stay in the room. Okay. And now we're going to let you out of the room.
You really hung up on
Now we're going to put you back in the room.
You really hung up on that bell, aren't you?
I am hung up on the bell.
He is.
There's a whole fanfic waiting to happen about the bell.
It's funny that you this is just marginally related, but it's funny that you are reminded that you didn't like Reign of Terror, how much you didn't like Reign of Terror, and you're praising the animation in this. But it's also kind of funny that the group that did they co-animated Reign of Terror was Planet 55 Productions, which is who Big Finish Creative bought out and who they've become. And Big Finish Creatives who did the animation for this one. So this group, this animation house, actually co-animated Reign of Terror.
But do you see the difference in style?
Yes.
That's where,
Well, they took those CG computer skills and put them to the backgrounds, because the backgrounds look absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
They did look great.
And I think that's what they've done good is they've taken and I think I like this one better than I think I praised Galaxy 4, even though I think it had moments where it was too bright and they took too many liberties. This one I liked even better, and I think they did a better job. And I'm with you. I think that the animation serves the story well, but it does, at least with Galaxy 4, I felt like the animation took care of some of the pacing of that story, although that story doesn't have a pacing problem like this one does. But it makes this animation makes the pacing problem, to me, even more obvious in this one. And the reason being is because if you're seeing this, I think, in live action, and I have seen the second episode because I watched it back when we reviewed this the first time. But if you
I made sure to watch the live action one.
I've actually even seen it since then, but it hasn't been real recent. Anyway, but when you watch that, in live action, some of that drawn out the parts that are very drawn out, I don't want to say they're very visual, but they almost feel necessary because it's in live action, and you're seeing more of what's happening. You're seeing the emotion in faces. You're seeing those kind of things, the pausing, the sneaking around. There's more personality that comes out in the performance. In the animation,
there's more tension building.
Yeah, and in the animation, they try their best to fill those, especially those silent gaps where there's not a lot going on. They do try to fill those, but they feel compelled to slow the character down unnecessarily in order to try to draw some of that tension, but it kind of backfires and doesn't work. And so I think the animation makes some of those long drawn out pieces that there's not a lot of audio happening a lot more obvious. And so that's what I don't like about this. I do like that if you watch the Telesnap version and the existing episode, the monastery itself is very confined and small and limited. I do like that they've backed up and they've widened out. You see a lot more of the upper level of the monastery. You see a lot more wider shots. They chose to stay on a lot of wider shots. They didn't come in to faces and to things as often as they've done in some of the other animations, and not just this animation house, but other animation houses where they've done a lot of cuts. This one did a lot more static shots, which I thought really looked good because the backgrounds look so incredible. Also, I don't think it's as vast and wide open as Fury of the Deep, which I felt at times they'd open that up almost too much. And so I think that this kind of meets that meld between that and Galaxy 4 and kind of makes the animation better. So in that sense, I think visually there's a lot of things that are better about it.
Yeah, I'd agree with all of that.
I think
they got better on the facial emotions too on all the characters. I felt like there was a lot more there than we have previously in the past.
I agree. Yeah.
What else were you going to say, Glenn?
Oh, just that I had forgotten how cute and cuddly the Yeti look in this one. They're not so much in Fear, but this one they look so cute and cuddly. But I think the animation, while they were trying to still draw and be faithful to that style, they didn't look as cute and cuddly in the animation. So I think that was also an improvement. Because if you go back and watch the live action ones, they look just big giant teddy bears. They're not very menacing at all in the live action anyway.
Well, and they kind of accentuate and make them be able to move a little better, I think, in the animation.
I think the other thing about this, as far as the pacing goes, the serial, and we've talked about this and things in the past, was meant to watch a week at a time. So 20 minutes of a slow-paced story doesn't feel as long and drawn out. But when it comes out in animation, we feel compelled to watch all of it at once because it feels like a Disney movie or it feels like an animated film. And so we tend to watch it all together. And I think that the story would be more enjoyable even in the animation, in slow doses.
See, I did not sit down and watch them all at once. So I didn't have as... Oh, how did you watch them, Sean?
I watched them over my lunch breaks at work, and I watched one episode a day. So I was limiting myself to just that one, 20 some odd minute segment, and then I'd step away from it, and then I would come back the next day and watch another 20 some odd minute segment. And I feel like I don't disagree with you, Glenn. I think the impetus is there for us to omnibus things and try and just devour the whole story arc at once, especially in animation. But I really wanted to slow down and because of that, we've talked about that before, and especially with a capture escape cycle or something where you want to, you have to remember this was a different style of TV telling or storytelling back in the day. And so I purposely did that with this one. And there's some, in a way, it extremely helped because of the pacing issues of the story. I think if I'd tried to sit through, a 2.5 hour block of it all at once, it would have been like, ugh.
and I didn't even watch the entire 2.5 hour block. I think I watched it in 2 parts. I think I watched 3 stories one day, or 3 episodes one day and 3 episodes the next.
But so yeah, breaking it up into smaller doses definitely helped. But what didn't help is the overall story arc, where it's just, well, it feels like I just watched this because we're back in this silly room, we're just, somebody else left the room. Stay in the house, Carl. I mean, that's what I kind of felt like I was screaming at TV the whole time.
I think
there's Yetis out there. Why would you go on the mountain again?
It does feel very claustrophobic in one location. I do think that you should watch the surviving episode for sure, just to get better looks of the Hills of Wales that they shot in, that was a stand-in for Tibet. But
did you guys watch the bonus feature?
I did, and it's
Troughton in Tibet.
Yeah, it's even more gorgeous.
They almost didn't do it justice.
Yeah, no, you're right. But that being said, I am glad that they stayed true to even some of the visuals of that. They could have easily said, okay, we're going to animate this as though they're actually in the Himalayas. But they didn't. Mm-hmm. They still chose that look that they ended up getting with, and that was fine for what they were doing. And so I appreciated that we still got that. But yeah, that Troughton in Tibet with Haydock and Fraser and the makeup lady, I can't remember her name. That was really, really good. That was enjoyable to watch how they used all that location shooting.
Sean, it's funny that you struggled with the latter half, or the first half, because I struggled with the latter half.
Really?
Kind of I don't know if it felt like the animation didn't quite probably do the action justice enough, that it just wasn't, it just felt dragged out and took forever on the latter half of the story for me than the first half. I guess I like the mystery, the intrigue and the mystery of everything, and the build up to how things are going to go.
There's something to be said for that, because the animation style definitely benefits a big lumbering monster. We've joked about, here comes the Doctor Who monster lumbering out of the ocean, or here they come lumbering out of the dark, or here they come in a cave, or they're always lumbering. They have this kind of slow gait to it, and yet the Yeti, that's the perfect personification of that. When you talk about a lumbering beast, this is exactly what comes to mind, is this giant fur-covered claws, and it staggers as it goes back and forth across screen, and the animation is like, yeah, that's it, that's a lumber. Good job, guys. You nailed it.
Although even when I've seen lumbering beasts, I don't even think these were as lumbering as some were. They moved at a good pace, but still gave that lumbering effect, that necessity for that. Yeah, so I think that looked good. I thought that
I
very
agree.
effective. I think what I've seen even recently in reading other people's reviews is people talking about how they've accused Victoria of being disrespectful in entering the inner sanctum or whatever it is. In watching it after seeing those reviews, I don't see that at all, because it's not like she's barging in there as though she has some privilege. She's going in there mostly out of necessity, and I mean, they know something's up here.
Partially out of curiosity.
Yeah, and something's going on here, and I think she's well aware. And it's that exploratory nature of being with the Doctor and trying to find out what exactly is happening here. And so I think she's being falsely criticized for, that, or the character's being falsely criticized for that, because I kind of feel that it's made clear to us that, it's curiosity, and it's exploratory, because she's trying to, find out, get to the bottom of what's going on here.
If anything, it's far less egregious than Sarah Jane going, "Oh, restricted. What's in this room?" and barging in.
Right,
Right. Investigative reporter or not, be damned. It says keep out, woman. And Victoria, I feel like, as you said, she had a reason to investigate this, despite everybody saying, "Oh, don't go in there, don't bother the guy." It's like, yeah, but we've looked everywhere else.
Yeah.
Well, and it's a little frustrating also that once she gets in there, then she falls into the companion trope of getting hypnotized, and then that takes a whole episode in and of itself to get her unhypnotized, and so I get why they sent her in there, but it also becomes a little frustrating on the back end of it in that aspect.
Well, and
I was so happy when they got there, and Jamie and Tommy they're smashing up the machinery. Not the important looking machinery, mind you, just the stuff on the wall. But okay, well, they're doing their thing. And the doctor is paralyzed as he's fighting with the great intelligence. And you can tell that there's some sort of mental force standoff, even though they're not moving. I mean, it's not like they didn't animate the Aquaman rays or anything. It was just there. And it worked. It totally worked for it. And then Victoria comes in, and I'm like, oh, Victoria's going to get to save the day. This will be great. Nope. She's just going to stand there and scream, I can't do it. And it's like, aw. I was really hoping for more.
I mean, as we've got to see more Victoria, overall, she's not as much of the screaming Violet as everyone kind of thought she was. But then there are instances where she does wind up falling into that trope. And it's a shame because she's so good when she's not doing that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Especially considering she's a period character, She's from Victoria.
Yeah, I was really hoping for other Victoria instead of this Victoria when we got to that scene.
Yeah.
But it is what it is, the 60s.
I did like. Go ahead.
One of the things that part of why it feels like probably the latter half struggles is the Doctor is much more subdued in this story. The Troughtonisms and the Troughton-esseness of this Doctor isn't as strong later in the later half of the stories, where he's a little bit more prominent, a little more in the front, a little bit more the Doctor we're used to. And I don't know if it's the gravity of the situation that makes him go a bit more serious and a bit more withdrawn, or why exactly, but there's a change somewhere there in the latter half of the story that makes him just not as large of a presence as he normally is.
Well, I think,
and that's why I like a Troughton story. It's Troughton, and he's so good. And while it's a good performance, it's just such a different performance than what I'm used to from him that it takes the enjoyment down a little bit for me.
I think it's a little bit there in the beginning, because what seemed a bit off for me was the Doctor's insistence that Jamie and Victoria stay in the TARDIS and he go off and do this. And we haven't had that a lot of times with the Troughton Doctor, where he feels like he needs to put his companions, out of reach of danger. I mean, he's not running them headlong into, terrible situations, but he's never really felt this protective of them. And so that was a little offsetting at the beginning. And I think that leads to sort of that standoffishness and, almost isolation the feeling of isolation that you get with his character, because he's continuing to go off and do things on his own.
And I never got the impression he thought there was a danger there. Like, he doesn't know there's Yeti. He doesn't know the great intelligence is there. So why leave them behind?
Right. Maybe he just thought he was going to pop in and drop the bell off. I don't.
I think I disagree with that. Before that reason, I think his insistence on, oh no, you stay. I'll go and do this real quick and let you know when it's safe. He's already on guard about something, and we don't know what it is. And my whole confusion about the bell, I think that fed into that. I think I picked up on that, and that's another reason why. Okay, there's obviously some history here beyond. You know what I mean? I feel like that played into that. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. There's an oddness about that.
I do like the change of look for Padma Samsava. I think that at least in the last episode of the reconstruction, it's very clearly that they've used, you know, prosthetics or makeup in order to make the guy look older. But it doesn't quite. I mean, it works. It works for the story when you see that alone. But then when you see this, and he's kind of more ethereal and more of a monster, I think
mummified.
Yeah, mummified.
Mm-hmm.
It works a lot better, especially at the end when he just kind of poofs to dust. Because it sounds like from the behind the scenes thing, they originally, now we wouldn't have got to see this on TV anyway because they cut it, but it sounds like they melted a skull and kind of had a gruesome end that way. Which would have been
Indiana Jones death.
Yeah, which would have been very effective as well. Well, and even Dragonfire death, we had the same thing.
Yeah, that's true.
But it would have been effective as well. But I think this worked because he is such, in that mummified state, or seems to be in that mummified fight, that when he just kind of, poofs into dust, it really works. It's effective.
Yeah, I like the animation of him. He's another reason probably why it feels like it drags in the later half of the story for me, is because his performance and his dialogue just takes forever.
So slow and so
and he becomes more prominent and more prominent.
You're right. It's in the last 2 episodes especially, there's a lot of off-screen dialogue from this guy.
And he does a great job. It just takes forever to do it because he alternates between that sinister and the normal so well. Mm-hmm. It's just okay. Speed it up a little, guy.
And there's a lack of background music in this. And I know there's a lot of Doctor Who, especially in the early days, that does not rely on, musical scores in the background. But this one seemed noticeably lacking. And I don't know if I think maybe part of that is because they obviously felt like they needed that blowing snow aspect to give that Himalayas Tibetan feel. And that almost becomes not necessarily distracting, but almost a little too noticeable at times. To the point where I felt like that should have kind of blended into the background. And sometimes I was sitting there thinking, wow, that wind's really blowing out there. I don't know if you guys noticed that either.
I did. And in fact, I think this one, not that I'm an advocate for changing things for the sake of changing them, but I'd be curious if you took, say a Tom Baker soundtrack with the bum bum bum, that particular music cue that they use frequently in the thumb, and put that to this story, marching around a corridor before you get locked in the room again. And I think it could liven things up a bit.
Yeah, it might not make it feel so dragged out and stagnant. I think the audio is some of the best audio. I remember listening to this thing because I did the reconstruction, and then I also did the audio with linking narration, which I believe I think Fraser did this one. And I remember struggling at times to hear the audio in this, but boy, they've really cleaned the audio up from those old tapes, and they sound great. This one, there wasn't anywhere that I felt like I didn't understand or couldn't hear what somebody was saying.
Yeah, definitely not.
Well, anything on this? I guess, until the realization watching this was until there's an official announcement. We have the unofficial announcement that there is some, but this is the last animation for now. So
again, the animation is so good that I wish they would do more and finish off what we're missing.
Well, and like I say, if that write up from the, what was it, the Mirror or the Sun? That was the Mirror, I think, is right. They're at least going to announce 2 this year. I don't know that we'll get them this year, but they are going to announce 2, and the alleged colorized episode 2. But I think that they've, especially with Galaxy 4 and Abominable Snowman, they've shown that they have a good track record, and that these things look good now. They're really doing neat things with them. Fury from the Deep was good. Even ones that weren't necessarily Big Finish Creative involved were good. I think that obviously everybody had a problem, and rightfully so, with the animation that was in Web of Fear for the one missing episode. But
yeah,
I think they've proven that animation is the way to go, and you can make it look good without feeling like you have to be entirely beholden to shooting scripts. I think what I appreciated on this one as well is there is a reconstruction version on this. So you have the option to see a reconstructed version, and it has the existing episode on there. So that's available as well.
Just like, once again, we've been given a black and white version as well as a color version,
right.
which I appreciate. If you're going to do it, just go ahead and give it to us. And yeah, I'll shell out a couple extra bucks for a 3-disc set in order to secure all of the available options on it.
Yeah.
Which I have to say, on the last couple, the color I think has been superior, and this one I think it was pretty even. I watched the first couple episodes in black and white, and then the last part in color, and I felt that they were pretty much on par with each other.
Well, to be fair, there's not a lot of colorful aspects about this.
That's true.
Well, I think with this one too, the remote location, the claustrophobic nature, in some ways lends itself to that black and white, horror story kind of feel to it. But then you're right, the Himalayas and the outdoor elements to it. The colors popped, so it definitely fit the bill in both ways. I think my only complaint in comparing this to Web of Fear, the spheres didn't glow in Web of Fear. And when these all glow, I think the spheres are incredibly effective and eerie and creepy when they just beep, 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 and then they start rolling across the floor on their. I mean, that's an awesome setup for something.
Did the individual
I don't remember
ones glow in this one? I thought they did when they were in the pyramid, but it didn't.
Yeah, when they're in the pyramid, they cast that glow.
Did, and but we didn't have. Well, yeah, we didn't have them in pyramids in Fear, though, right? We had them in pyramids in Downtime, but they didn't in Fear. So there wouldn't be any.
I thought there was a pyramid in Fear.
There was a pyramid
at the end of Fear, but I don't know that it had.
It was that one that the doctor got in. It wasn't the control
okay.
spheres. Maybe they were stacked up there next to it, though. Now that I think about it. Anyway, but I don't remember them glowing individually. Did they? Like when they were on their own, just rolling around? Maybe they did. I don't know. I don't recall that, but maybe they did.
Am I wrong?
I don't recall that either.
The only glowing
maybe
I
I'm
remember,
stuck on the scene in the cave.
Well, they did. They glow when they're stacked, and then the whatever they're putting out. Oh, that was another thing. You're talking about the cave. I think now it's clearer in my mind where in Travers and Wells, when Travers is in the cave, and this is where he's taken to, he's transported to the future past. I think that I understand clearly now where that event is. It's when he's gone into the cave and he's come out and he's been unconscious, and then he ends up stumbling back to the cave, and so in that time between there is when all of that outer body future stuff happens. Obviously, in for this time it's very condensed, but all of these adventures that he has, Travers and Wells. Mm-hmm. So I that actually seemed a bit more clear to me watching it this time. So
that makes sense.
That's a very cool point.
We put out on Twitter a tweet asking that if anybody wanted to give us a little quick review, they could do so. We did get a response from Rob over at the Doctor Who show. And he says, some good ideas, interesting characters, and great location, but it doesn't really come together. It is, in effect, a total snooze fest. It just drags along, and it doesn't really do much in the end. Watch it for the sake of watching it, and that's about all I can say. And I think he's probably right there in some aspects of that.
Hi, I'm Rupert Booth.
I am known as Paul Ferry.
My name is Barry Williams. Together, we host Time Ram.
Time Ram's a cruel mistress.
It's a random number generator.
That also.
We roll a number from 1 to 30, and that's our doctor. Then 1 to 300 for the story, and then we ram them together. Even if it doesn't make sense.
Cruel, I tell you.
Time Ram, putting the wrong doctors in the wrong stories, so you don't have to.
You're listening to Traveling the Vortex.
You are invited on an adventure across all of time and space, in a completely random order. It's the Police Box in the Junkyard podcast. Jump in the TARDIS with your hosts,
Eric Gulbranson,
Asad Kheshki,
and
Matthew Kressel.
Explore Doctor Who TV stories, audio adventures, and books, both novels and non-fiction. The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast. It's the entire Whoniverse on shuffle. The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast is a member of the Direction Point Network and is available about once a month wherever you find your podcasts. You are listening to Traveling the Vortex.
Sean, what do you got coming up with the schedule?
Well, coming up next, we dip back into the Time War with The War Doctor Begins, box set number 2, Warbringer, and we will cover all of the elements of that story. And then we start our look at Season 6B, so you're going to get some more Troughton. We will cover the novelization, the Target novelization of the War Games, and then a short trip BBC book called War Crimes. And then we'll go back to the Time War with War Doctor Begins 3 Battlegrounds. And then some really fun stuff that I'm excited for with our 60th anniversary tie-in this year. The Doctor Who Weekly Panini Comics, The Iron Legion, and then also the comic strip adaptations that Big Finish did of that story. So I think that's going to be a great compare and contrast.
A lot of fun.
All of that and more.
All right, you can find us on our website, travelingthevortex.com. If you get any value out of this podcast, why not consider putting some value back into it? You can do that by clicking on our Patreon link and consider supporting us. We've got another quiz show coming up very, very soon for those of you that are members and get some dip into those exclusives. And we're also going to have Sean's Star Trek reviews will continue over there, and he is starting season 1 of DS9, so that will be up very soon. So look for that. If you could just give us, just a couple of dollars a month, you get access to all this, and it completely helps us to keep the lights on here at Traveling the Vortex. Also, please consider giving us a 5-star review wherever you subscribe to this podcast. Make sure you join in the conversation on Facebook in our listeners forum. There you can engage with listeners and share your thoughts and insights about this, and maybe tell us what you think of this story. Anything else we need to cover before we close this show? If not, until next time, I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Be seeing you.
Thanks for listening.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.
Direction point! Direction point!
A Doctor Who podcast network.